On January 7th of this year, something was done that apparently had never been done. The U.S. Constitution was read on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, it was somewhat shocking to me that in 221 years of history of the House of Representatives, they'd never read the document out loud that they were sworn to protect and defend. Now, what was even more funny was really the posturing that went on around this event of whether it was relevant and whether it was important and valuable. But I thought it was interesting because it shows an increasing interest in the founding documents of our country. Now, last year, for our little homeschool group, I ordered a pocket-sized copy of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Now, what exactly one does with a pocket-sized copy of the Constitution, I have no idea, but made a good lesson for the kids. But it was interesting because I think most of us, we have a little bit of a working knowledge of the Constitution. You know, we studied it in high school. At some point, we had to, dig through the language and try to understand part of it. But I think that as Americans, especially those of us in the post-baby boom generation and beyond, there's one part of the Declaration Declaration of Independence that we understand really well. In fact, for many Americans, we've made it the theme of our lives. And it is that line that says that our Creator has endowed us with certain inalienable rights. And among those rights is the right to the pursuit of happiness. Have you noticed how much the pursuit of happiness guides the way we approach life? In order to pursue happiness, we work endless hours in order to gain the material wealth so that we can buy the stuff that we think will make us happy. For the pursuit of happiness, we abandon marriages because they don't meet our needs. They don't make us happy anymore. And we go in search of new relationships. In the pursuit of happiness, we seek extreme sports and the adrenaline rush that goes with that. We even find vicarious happiness watching things like The Biggest Loser and American Idol. But at the same time that most Americans would say, yeah, I'm basically happy, the use of antidepressants is on the rise. In 2007, the most widely prescribed drugs in America were antidepressants. So we have to ask ourselves the question, are we really happy? Or is it possible that we've all along been asking the wrong question and following the wrong pursuit? And does the Bible have anything to say about this need to be happy? I want you to look with me at Psalm 16. This psalm is written by David, who was one of the first kings of Israel. Now, David, you would think David's the king. He has everything he needs to be happy. And yet, David, at one point in his life, he pursues happiness in a way that brings him personal tragedy, that acts to the detriment of his nation and his people, and apart from his own moral compass. But Psalm 16 has some things that I think can be helpful as we look at this need and this human desire for happiness. One of the reasons that we often are unhappy is because we think we lack something. We think that we're just missing out on something, and if we just had that one thing, we'd be happy. And sometimes we even search for the things that are really impossible for us to achieve. I mean, let's face it, I will never be 20 again. And it doesn't matter what I pursue to be happy in that realm, I can't change certain things. But because we sense a lack in our lives, we determine that it's up to us to find those things that we believe will make us happy. But look at the approach. Look at what David has to say about this pursuit. Verse 1, David says, "Keep me safe, O God, for in you I take refuge. I said to the Lord, you are my Lord. Apart from you, I have no good thing." David acknowledges that his pursuit will never meet his needs, and that it is only in God himself that he will find his needs met. Look what he says, "Apart from you, I have no good thing." And David defines good thing as anything that is pleasant or agreeable, pleasant to the intellect, pleasant to the physical, pleasant to the emotional or moral sense. And David says, it's only in you that I find any good thing. And then having acknowledged that, David recognizes that we have a need for limits in our desires. Have you ever noticed We go, if I just get that house, I'll be happy. And then we get in the house, and a few years later, we're thinking, if I just had a little more house, if I just had a little newer car, if I just had a little more success for my children, I would be happy. But look what David says. He says in verse 5, Lord, you have assigned me my portion and my cup. You've made my lot secure. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance. And David recognizes that we as human beings in our search for happiness, we often don't know when enough is enough. John D. Rockefeller was asked, how much money is enough? And he famously responded, just a little bit more. And David says, I'm going to be content to rest within the boundary lines that God sets out for me. It's not in seeking just a little bit more, but it's resting within the confidence that the God who is the source of every good thing is also the one who knows exactly how much of anything I need. Now, when he talks about boundary lines, he's not saying that nothing bad will ever come into my life. He's not saying it's only going to be the good stuff. He's saying God also knows my portion of pain. He knows my portion of difficulties, but I'm going to rest within the boundary lines of what he chooses to give me. And David goes on and says, I will praise the Lord who counsels me. Even at night, my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I will never be shaken. And David says, I will not pursue happiness, but I will pursue the God who is the source of those good things in my life. And God becomes that pursuit that he sets in front of him, and it takes such a place of importance in his life that everything else takes second place. And he says, because the Lord is in that place of prominence, because the Lord is at my right hand, I can relax and let him take care of what is good in my life. Now, it's important to realize that David has a very specific God in mind. In verse 4, he talks about those who follow other gods, who take the names of other gods on their lips. And he says, the God that I seek is Jehovah. He is the God of the Bible. He's the creator, and he is the one in whom I can have confidence. You and I who live in the 21st century have an advantage that David never had, because this same God sent Jesus Christ. And in Jesus Christ, we saw revealed this God in all his glory. We saw him revealed as a God of compassion and love, but we also saw him revealed as a God of holiness. And when David set God before him, we got to see Jesus, who revealed to us that God needed to have holiness set before him. So David didn't know Jesus Christ. We can see Jesus Christ as the exact representation of God himself. And Jesus Christ says, through faith in me, I will give my life for you so that you can enter into the presence of God. Because Jesus Christ satisfied the righteous requirements that God had, we now have an open invitation into the presence of the God of glory. And look what the results are of entering into that presence. David says, my heart is glad, my tongue rejoices, my body will rest secure. You have made known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. And joy is defined as a great delight or happiness caused by something exceptionally good. And when we enter into the presence of God because of the invitation of Jesus Christ, we will find joy. Not simply temporary happiness based on our own pursuit, but joy that is caused by being in the presence of God. David would tell us that it is not in pursuing God or in pursuing happiness that we find it. When we pursue God rather than happiness, we will find both.